Welcome everybody to the Port of Olympia Commission meeting of October 25th, 2021. I'm filling in for Commissioner Downing since he's a little under the weather today. So as Vice Chair, I'll be chairing tonight's meeting. The Port of Olympia is working diligently to address the threat posed by COVID to Thurston County. I can't quite see my whole screen. There we go. On March 16th, we adopted a resolution authorizing certain emergency powers in light of the COVID outbreak, and including invoking applicable emergency exemptions to meeting notice requirements and location restrictions. Pursuant to this resolution, our commission is conducting today's meeting remotely. The Port is following guidance from Thurston County Health Department to take all efforts to prevent the spread of this virus, and we're acting in the interest of the safety and welfare of the public, the community, and our employees to limit its spread. Let's see if I can get this to advance. Darn it. Just need patience with minor, there we go. So I'll start the meeting with a call to order and Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Brown, would you like to lead the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, Commissioner, I would. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance
flag
to the
of the
flag
Republic,
of the United States.
which stands for one nation.
Under
Wait,
God.
wrong one. Sorry. Let's start that over. I
Okay.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
United States
America and to the republic for which it stands,
Which stands.
one nation,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible, with
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Next, I'd like to see if we can approve the agenda or if anyone has suggestions for changes. Fellow commissioners?
I have one, Commissioner, I'm a tiny bit confused because we had an updated agenda come out today,
Yes.
but it looks like the same agenda in the printed packet, which I got last week. So are they the same?
Yeah, there were two items added to the advisory calendar, one for the climate plan support and framework from POCAC, and the second is discussion of Federal Aviation Administration requirements for Newmarket Industrial Campus properties by Rudy Rudolph. So those two were added under the advisory calendar.
Thank you for that clarification.
You bet. And I understand your confusion. Those kind of came out at the last minute. Do my fellow commissioners have any requests for changes to the agenda, or do I have a motion to approve?
I would move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the revised agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have an agenda. Great. Next, we have Executive Director report.
Great, thank you. You can start the PowerPoint. Next slide, please. On September 30th, Senior Manager of Communications, Marketing, and Government Affairs, Jenny Folia Jones, and I attended a community connector event at the Joint Base Lewis McChord. We were hosted by JBLM 7th Infantry Division, Major General Stephen G. Smith, and bayonet leaders. Also in attendance were City of Olympia Mayor Cheryl Selby and City of Olympia Manager Jay Burney. Next slide, please. Port staff members Lynn Fosher, Jenny Folia Jones, and TJ Quant attended the second virtual Maritime Disaster Resilience Workshop. Our very own Marine Terminal Director Lynn Fosher was invited to be a panelist to discuss the roles and responsibilities of break bulk ports following a large-scale earthquake. Thank you for representing the Port of Olympia well, Lynn. Next slide. Capital investments Planning and Environmental Programs Director and Interim Administrative Services Director, Lisa Parks, and I attended the Pacific Northwest Waterways Association's annual conference last week. Some of the topics covered included the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Operations Panel, infrastructure projects, and improvements to safety and maritime commerce. We also got a sneak preview to the various maritime projects that are being sought for funding in future infrastructure funding request. Next slide. I just sent this a copy of this letter to the commission earlier this afternoon and wanted to let the public know as well that I signed last week a memorandum of understanding with the Broadband Action Team that is comprised of Thurston County, Thurston Economic Development Council, Thurston PUD, Thurston Regional Planning Council, the Nisqually Tribe, and our agency, the Port of Olympia. The Memorandum of Understanding signifies the commitment of the signatories to support and coordinate on broadband projects, to meet once a month and provide letters of support for various projects as they come forward. Next slide. I'm pleased to welcome Chris Martinez to our port team. Chris has been hired as our new contract and grant administrator. So welcome aboard, Chris, and I hope you will join me in welcoming him. Next slide. As always, we have several ways for the public to engage with us. Here are some easy ways to contact us, give us feedback, or request a conversation. And that's it. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Executive Director Gibney. I'm pleased to see that you went ahead and signed that memorandum of understanding for the Broadband Action Team. I had forwarded you the MOU from the BAT last week that I received from Thurston County. So thank you for sending that to us. Of course, since it just came through our mail this afternoon, we have not had time to review it. So we'll look forward to doing that.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions from fellow commissioners?
I have none.
Okay, great. So next on our agenda, we have litigation report. Ms. Brown?
Commissioner, I do not have a litigation report this evening.
Well, that's good news. Thank you. Next on our agenda is public comment and commission response. So let's see, we have 20 participants. We have a number of members of the public. And would anyone like to offer public comment at this time? You will have additional opportunities later in the meeting. Deb Patton. And will staff please start the 3-minute timer?
Sure that she's over yet.
Ms. Patton, please go ahead. If you're able to unmute.
I'm so sorry. I'm Deborah Patton. I'm a member of the Port of Olympia Citizens Advisory Committee, and I'm a member of the POCAC Centennial Subcommittee. And I would like to speak to the proposed budget for the upcoming Centennial. The POCAC is excited about the proposed Centennial events and the legacy project that was put forth by the committee, which is made up of 12 port staff members. And the proposal includes printing and distribution of the 100-year port history book to school and public libraries, signage at all of the port properties, and a celebration in November of 2022 as November 7th, 2022 marks the actual 100-year anniversary of the port. Also includes presentations on port history to the community. And additionally, there is the Centennial Legacy Project, which will be a permanent artistic feature of some sort. They're currently reviewing or considering different designs. And so the POCAC in its entirety hope that in the 2022 final budget that the commission adopts that it will robustly fund this once in 100-year centennial. Thank you.
As usual, we'll reserve commission response until the end of public comment. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak at this time? Tim Leadingham. Can we unmute Mr. Leadingham, please?
I'm having him come on over. Hold on.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I didn't even know I could unmute. Are you voting on the Panatini lease in Tumwater tonight?
No, we're not, Mr. Leadingham, but it will be discussed.
Okay, thank you.
And you're welcome to comment later again when we discuss it in advisory.
Point of order, Commissioner Zeta, perhaps Mr. Leadingham would like to give comment tonight, and that is allowed, even though that issue is not on tonight's agenda.
In fact, I'm sorry, you're right. It's not on tonight's agenda. I was confused. Newmarket, Rudy's only talking about FAA and the Oil Hotel. Thank you for that reminder, Commissioner Downing. So Mr. Leadingham, no, we won't even be discussing it tonight, but you're welcome to comment now or later.
I don't have any comments prepared, so I don't want to take up any more of your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leadingham. Anyone else care to comment? I'm not seeing any hands up, but if there's anyone attending by phone or some other way and you would like to comment, just go ahead and speak. Mr. Langens.
Hold on, I'm bringing him over.
Mr. Langens, I think you're unmuted now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I just have a quick comment. I'm glad to see that the hotel situation will be discussed later on. I think we need a good report on that. I realize that housing per se is not the mission of the port, but I think the primary underlying mission of the port is paying attention to the really critical issues in the community. And I think housing is certainly one of those critical issues. If the problem is with the FAA, has anybody thought about contacting Marilyn Strickland to see if she could aid in facilitating some greater understanding with the FAA? I think that would be a practical first step. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Langens. Would anyone else like to speak at this time? If you're not able to raise your hand, you can just go ahead and speak. I'm not seeing any hands and I'm not hearing anyone speak. So I think we will close public comment at this point, and we will have another opportunity for public comment later in the meeting. Next on our agenda, we have
Commissioner, point of order, would you mind asking for
Oh.
commission response just in case there is any?
Thank you
And
so much.
trust me,
It's
you're
been a
doing
while
great.
since
I
I've done
I know
this.
how it is.
Thank you. Yes, commission response to public comment. Commissioner Downing, would you like to go first?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. Thank you, Ms. Patton and Mr. Langens for your comments. Ms. Patton, I'm excited as well for the Centennial, and I look forward to the organization of activities related to that. And Mr. Langens, I think we'll be discussing that a little later, so I won't comment at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner McGregor?
I don't have much. Thank you, all three commenters. Tim, and I didn't get your last name, Tim. Look forward to hearing your comments as that process moves forward on that lease. But thank you for your comments, and I think Commissioner Downing covered it adequately. Thanks.
I thank Ms. Patton, Mr. Leadingham, and Mr. Langens for your comments. Ms. Patton, we moved the budget for the Centennial celebration around at our work session last week. You may have been there. Staff decided to put most of the funds for that budget elsewhere. So it's still heavily funded. Mr. Leadingham, you bet we sure do need to talk about Panettone. It was announced in the paper that we would be talking about it tonight, but it's not on our agenda. I expect we'll be talking about it at some meeting soon. And Mr. Langens, the Oyo Hotel, yes, we need FAA approval. There's a way to get it. Representative Marilyn Strickland has voiced her support of this last summer. And I think that's a great idea that we could enlist her support in taking next steps. And I want to thank the Olympian for calling this to our attention. They've done a great job of calling several of these issues to our attention. All right. Next on our agenda, we have consent calendar. We have bills and vouchers. Would anyone like to move that we approve those?
I make a motion to approve September bills and vouchers batches 35 through 38.5 in the amount of $804,990.40.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Does that cover all the vouchers?
Yes.
Great. All right. Next, there's nothing on the action or action other calendar, so we'll move directly to the advisory calendar. First on the advisory calendar is Joint Resolution 2021-something, intent for collaborate with Thurston County on increase of commissioners. Ms. Brown, our general counsel.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good evening, Commission. This is Felicia Brown, your General Counsel, and I'm here today regarding the joint resolution of intent to increase the number of commissioners for both the Port Commission and the Board of County Commissioners for Thurston County. Next slide, please. And so what we have today is a joint resolution establishing mutual intent to collaborate on respective ballot measures to increase the number of commissioners from the current number of 3 to 5 and redraw district boundaries for both the Board of County Commissioners of Thurston County and the Port Commission. As it stands, this Port Commission plans to submit a ballot proposition asking voters whether to increase the number of commissioners at the next district general election, which is November 2022. The Board of County Commissioners plans to also submit a ballot to the voters with the same question of whether to go from 3 commissioners to 5 if Thurston County surpasses 300,000 residents. There was a joint meeting between the Board of County Commissioners and the Port Commission on July 21st, 2021. At that time, it was decided that if Thurston County surpasses 300,000 residents, which we should know in April, then simultaneous ballot measures would be put forth and interagency collaboration would be best between the 2 agencies to ensure voter clarity as well as cost sharing. And the cost sharing would really be the result of a redistricting committee, which would align district boundaries and facilitate that cost sharing. That redistricting committee would have members from both the Port and the Board of County Commissioners, specifically the chair of each agency, as well as the county auditor. And the county auditor would be a non-voting member, but would sit on that board to really help facilitate the redistricting process. And it would be up to the two chairs to collaborate and move the process forward. And so in your packet today is a copy of two joint resolutions. One of those you'll see on the top is dated October 14th. And that is the resolution as of October 14th that I worked on with the Board of County Commissioners attorney. However, we made small changes. Commissioner Downing actually made an edit that we were able to capture on the October 19th version that's in your packet in the first whereas clause. Since then, Commissioner Downing has given me another edit that I will take into consideration that really adds some clarity about process into the resolutions on the second page of the joint resolution. Today, I am here as advisory. And so if there are any questions that I can answer or comments on the draft resolution, I'd be happy to take that into consideration. As I've mentioned, I've been working with the Board of County Commissioners attorney on drafting this joint resolution and making sure that it's going through both boards simultaneously so that we can have this joint resolution approved along the same timeline. Next slide, please. Any questions?
Commissioners, any questions for Ms. Brown? Or
I guess
comments?
I'll start if you don't mind. First of all, Alicia, I think it's great. Fine piece of work. I think you captured the intent of our meeting with the Thurston County Board of Commissioners and in this format. So appreciate that. And you also acknowledged that I sent a couple of suggestions. So I appreciate that too. So anyway, I'm happy. Nice work.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. Yes, and my plan with the suggestions that you sent is to go over them with the county's attorney. We'll figure out ways to incorporate to the best extent we can.
Okay. Thank you, Felicia. I remember that all were in favor, all 5 or 6 commissioners, 3 county and 3 port, were all in favor of looking at this as a 5-district opportunity. And couple of things, well, it's not ideal, but having 5 districts is probably more desirable. But if the county doesn't get to 300,000 in April, then do they still put it? Are they still intending to put it on the ballot, or then do we go alone?
So I think what we decided from that July 21st meeting and what this resolution really supports is that in the event, which at this point we believe is unlikely, that Thurston County doesn't get to 300,000, we would go alone. And so the way that we've structured this joint resolution is that the first whereas clause establishes really the timeline and the way that this is kind of presented itself. And so the evolution is that the port decided that it wanted to submit this ballot proposition. And so the first whereas clause represents that. And as you go down and through it, it basically says the port made its decision, then the agencies work together. We're waiting on the census data, and then we're going to wait for that to be certified in the spring that's coming up. And if the numbers come back, we'll be working together. And then next year, if the numbers come back, we'll be able to work together if the numbers say what we need and form the redistricting committee. The thing that Commissioner Downing suggested was really being clear, and I think the phrase he used was not putting the cart before the horse, and that we're agreed that we're both going to put forth ballot measures. We didn't really get into that. We basically wrote it in a way that says, if the 300,000 is met, then we'll start working together. And so it presupposes that if it's not met, the port's able to move forward as planned, and the county will basically not be moving forward because they didn't get their 300,000.
Okay, so my next comment kind of follows up on that. So at the June, July meeting we had with the county commissioners, there was discussion that if we were to go to 5 districts and the county could not or didn't want to, then that would create a lot of confusion for individuals. And I agree with that. I think that's very true. The other part is that we could go and remain it with 3 distinct district boundaries, but add 2 more positions, and they could be at large, which doesn't create, but that means everybody would be voting for those 2 in addition to perhaps 1 out of their own district in the primary type of thing, if that should happen. But even in the general, where all citizens that are registered voters get to vote for the commissioner, regardless of the district that he is representing at that point. So it's something that would alleviate some of that confusion if everybody voted for at-large positions. I don't think it's ideal, but I still think it's an option to consider moving forward. So thank you for that.
Of course, Commissioner, that's a really good point. And at this point, we are stating our intent to move forward with the ballot proposition, but we're not locked into how we move forward in terms of 3 or 5 districts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Felicia, and thanks, fellow commissioners. I want to apologize for turning my video off. I have an unstable connection, and when my video's on, I can't always hear what you're saying. So I'll be not always visible, but I am listening. So Commissioner McGregor, that's a great point. If we go it alone, if Thurston County does not reach a population of 300,000, then the commission is not likely to move forward with the redistricting to 5 commissioners. And if that happens and the court goes it alone, that is likely to be confusing for voters. So I'm a little concerned about us keeping that option on the table. And I would like commissioners to discuss whether that's something we really want to do. Because the 2 virtues that we all agreed when we sat down with the county commissioners, 2 virtues of doing this together are that it will be less confusing for voters and it will be a more efficient use of resources, cheaper for the taxpayers. And of course, the county has the expertise for redistricting and we don't. So fellow commissioners, do we really want to go it alone if we don't hit the 300,000 mark? Commissioner McGregor brings up a good point.
Well, let me talk a little bit more about that. If we were to go it alone, and if we were to have 3 distinct districts and 2 at-large positions, there would be no redistricting needed other than what's being done as the census is today. What I'm not sure of is what does that do for the at-large when you're trying to equalize district count. So I mean, there's a lot to think about here, but I think that at some point in time, we need to go to a 5-district thing and a 5-district commission. And perhaps by going to 3 with 2 at large, should the county in the next few years decide to go to a 5-board commission, then we could redistrict everything so that there were 5 distinct districts. I'm just throwing up options. I'm not going to be around here when that happens, but I certainly think representation from some of the other parts of this county are long overdue. And I think that this is one way to at least start that process and bring it forward so that there are 5. The PUD could stay as they are. It wouldn't impact them if they didn't want to. They could stay as 3 districts. I know their water systems are a little bit, areas are smaller, but yet their districts and their population districts are all based on population, not election voter or elected voters. So anyway, I just think that at some point, I think it's something to explore. And I think it's a good time to do it is next year when it's something up front and we're keeping our eyes on what's happening.
Commissioner Downing, response?
I think that it's good to be, thinking 2 or 3 steps out. As soon as I read this resolution, I was happy that Felicia put that first whereas in there that said that the Port Commission desires to move to 5 commissioners. Then it goes on to say that, we're going to wait until next year when the county makes it to 300,000. So, but Commissioner McGregor gave us, you might say, a safety valve. I mean, we could start out with the same districts and 2 at-large members. So then we get this process started of going to a 5-person commission. And then upon review again of the RCW, perhaps then we can go to 5 districts. I prefer 5 districts as opposed to 3 districts with 2 at large, just because it guarantees a little bit more representation across the county. as opposed to two commissioners, let's say from the same neighborhood, which could happen with the at-large members. So we're thinking about these steps. This is a big step that we're taking right now with this a joint resolution, and it shows the intent. And I'm personally just hoping that the county makes it to 300,000 by next April. And if they don't, then I guess we'll reevaluate from there. That's my position.
So when we met with the county commissioners last summer, we had that meeting because the Port of Olympia, especially Commissioner Downing, was really pushing for the port to go it alone and go ahead with 5 commissioners. And the county was saying, yes, we want to do that when there's 300,000, and we want to do it with you. And after a lot of discussion last summer, the Port of Olympia commissioners came around to the county commissioners' perspective and said, okay, let's do this together. I remember that Senator Sam Hunt was one of many elected and former elected officials, Karen Fraser, who said, you guys need to do this together, or it gets too confusing for people and potentially messy. It sounds like we're backsliding when we're talking about potentially going it alone. And we're getting into the weeds. Should we have 5 districts? Should we have 2 at large? That's premature, and it's not our area of expertise. It's the county auditor's area of expertise. So I think we have lost clarity at this point, and I think we should communicate with the county and regain clarity. I don't believe these are ready for prime time. And I have some other questions that I would like to ask Ms. Brown. In some places, the headers say we're intending to increase the number of commissioners. In other places, the headings say we're intending to bring the issue to the voters. Those are 2 very different things. I believe that what we agreed with the county commissioners was not that we intended to create 5 districts or have 5 commissioners, but that we intended to jointly bring it to the voters with a ballot resolution. We should be consistent. Wherever we say we intend to increase the number of commissioners, we should say, for example, on page 12 of our packet, action summary 42 is to explore the viability of expanding to 5 commissioners. That's great. That's perfect. Provided that Thurston County surpasses 300,000 residents. That's great. However, on page 14, we start saying we intend to increase the number of commissioners. That is not consistent, I believe, with what we agreed in our meeting with the county commissioners. On the very next slide, slide 2, on page 14 of the packet, it says we have this joint resolution establishing mutual intent to collaborate on respective ballot measures to increase the number of commissioners. Those ballot measures would not necessarily increase the number of commissioners. They would ask the public whether they want to increase the number of commissioners. So we have to be careful and consistent in how we word this. The next sentence.
Sorry, Commissioner, I have a question. By
Yeah.
asking the public whether they want to increase the number of commissioners, it's going to be a yes or no question.
Yep.
And if they say yes, then we increase to 5. Am I following that process correctly?
Yes, but when we say that we intend to increase the number of commissioners, that's putting the cart before the horse, because we would not increase the number of commissioners if the public said no, because we're putting it to the public for a vote, right?
So your recommendation is to rephrased to focus on intend to put forth a ballot proposition.
Exactly. Yes, exactly right. Because if we're presupposing the preferred outcome of this ballot measure, that's not right. It's up, we're putting it up to the voters to decide. We're not telling the voters, we're asking the voters, right?
So I'm following, but there's a timing issue. So I think this may be something we discuss and kind of break down offline, because there's another question in there regarding redrawing the districts and the timing of when you put forth the ballot proposition and then when you would do your redistricting. And it may be something that we consult the auditor's office about to make sure that we don't wait too long to actually coordinate efforts. And then also, how do we coordinate efforts before putting the ballot proposition out to improve voter clarity? So I hear what you're saying. I just think that there's efforts to collaborate before the ballot propositions go, and then prepare the redistricting committee as well.
Right. So I think that's a great idea. We should absolutely be collaborating with the county auditor. On slide 2, joint resolution of intent on page 14 of the packet, the second bullet says, is unclear to me, and this appears in several places in this presentation. Port Commission plans to submit a ballot proposition asking voters whether to increase the number of commissioners in November 2022. Now that can be read in two ways. Either we're submitting a ballot proposition in November 22, or we're asking the voters to increase the number of commissioners in November 22, like they're going to vote for 5 commissioners in November 22. So that could be read in two different ways. If we're submitting a ballot proposition in November 22, then November 22 needs to be put immediately after plans to submit a ballot proposition. Otherwise, the meaning of that sentence is unclear.
Okay.
So that appears in a number of places. Is the intended meaning that the ballot proposition would be submitted in November of 2022? And the
fix is
5,
to put that clause after proposition.
right. And then if the voters chose 5 commissioners, they would have the option of voting for those 5 at a later date in 2023.
So if the ballot proposition is approved by the voters, then there's a whole process for how those commissioners would be elected to those new districts, depending on if we have additional districts or at large.
Great. So clarifying that throughout all these documents would be useful. And then there's one other point of clarification. There are several places where it says it is anticipated that the population of Thurston County will be determined to be at least 300,000 residents by May 2022. We cannot say that with certainty. To be fair, we should say it is anticipated that the population of Thurston County may be at least 300,000 residents by May 2022. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. We don't know that right now. So we can't say will, we must say may. Does that make sense?
I hear what you're saying. I think that will, may, shall, and there's another word that construction in contracts, they all have meanings that each person who's writing them believes means something different, but I hear what you're saying.
Well, will means we know and we don't know.
Yeah, so everybody kind of has a perspective on that. I hear you. There's a lot of people that share your opinion on that, but they are more interchangeable than people believe.
And Commissioners, I don't agree that. I think that sentence is fine because you have the word anticipate. So anticipate, the word anticipate means to, in some ways, guess. I anticipate it's going to be sunny tomorrow. It may not be sunny.
No, you're saying I anticipate that it will be sunny tomorrow. That means you're putting money on it.
Anyway, so I get where you're going with it, but I mean, I'm okay with it.
When you say will, you're putting money on it, and we can't put money on this. It should be may.
Okay.
Okay. And then there's one other wording that I find very awkward. A ballot in the very next whereas, this is on page 16 of our packet. A ballot proposition may be submitted to the qualified voters of the Port District. I think qualified is redundant. The voters of the Port District. right?
It's using the RCW language, so it's just a
Hmm.
matter if you want to use the RCW as construction or not.
Well, I would ask the auditor, but you know, the voters are qualified voters, so it seems redundant to me. But anyway, but the primary issue here is, do we really want to reserve the option of going it alone? I think that is inconsistent with the agreement we came to with the county commissioners this summer. So I do not want to renege on the agreement we made with the county commissioners. We had a long discussion. We had a lot of input from senior elected officials, and I respect that input. And I would take going it alone off the table at this point. Yeah. Executive
Oh.
Director.
I'd like to comment on that too, after Sam.
Thank you, Commissioner. And whether the commission wants to keep this option in is, obviously up for the commission to consider. I do recall specifically and have had follow-up conversations with County Manager Chavez that indeed the county anticipates that should they not reach their population threshold, that the port may indeed proceed to or may choose to proceed on its own. So I do not believe that the county is under the understanding that there was an agreement that if they didn't reach their population threshold or for other reasons choose not to proceed, that would negate the port's ability to do so. In fact, they have stated explicitly the opposite. So again, it's still up to the commission to decide, but just to clarify that I've had several opportunities to clarify that with Mr. Chavez in the intervening months.
Just to clarify, Executive Director Gibney, there's no question about our legal ability to do this. The question is what we agreed with the county commissioners in response to strong advice from wise and experienced public servants. And what we agreed at that time was that it would be unwise for us to go it alone. Yes, we're allowed to. There's no question about that. That's not the issue here. The issue is that we agreed that it would be wise for us to work with the county and not go it alone because it is less likely to confuse the voters and it is more likely to be an efficient use of taxpayer resources. Commissioner Downing.
Thank you, Commissioner Zita. Well, I mean, I can suggest to the commission that we all go back and review the video of that meeting. I know it exists. It was a little hard to find, but I did find it. And I haven't reviewed it like yesterday, so I can't, my recollection is not 100%. But the subject, to my recollection, the subject never came up of what the port would do if the county does not make it to 300,000. That's how confident they were in making it to 300,000 next April or May. So the subject never came up. And here we have a joint resolution that talks about us doing it together when they get to 300,000, and that's the extent of it. We can't really tie the hands of the future commission, even though all those candidates have made statements during their campaign. They're not commissioners yet, and they may go off in a different direction. So I think that this, in my opinion, I think you raised valid questions about what the port should do, but really based on our meeting with the county commissioners, this reflects the agreement we had. And, I suggest again that we review that video so we could see, exactly what was said.
Mr. McGregor, would you like to weigh in at all? Again?
Well, I've given you my thoughts. I just provided another option should the county decide not to go with 5. They don't make that plateau, they decide not to put it, or perhaps even they put it out there and the people decide they don't want to go with 5 county commissioners. That's always an option, even though they hit the 300,000, it's still a choice of the voters. I'm just putting out there, there's also another choice for us. It doesn't include going through a redistricting. It doesn't include spending resources on going through that whole process of redistricting, because it just means that there could be 2 open at-large seats on the Port Commission to get it to 5. And at some future time, if that process falls in like that, then that would mean that the current Port Commission at that time could then join and redistrict and fall in line with whatever the county comes up with once they reach that plateau and once the voters have ascertained they want 5 commissioner board at the county commission level. So what we have here is kind of what we agreed to, but there's always options open. I have not reviewed the thing as Commissioner Downing has done, but I plan to do that now just so refresh in my mind exactly what was said. So thank you.
Well, we've spent a lot of time talking about this, and I think we have more work to do. You may recall that Commissioner Ty Menser appeared before us right here at the port, making a strong argument that we should work together. And subsequent to that, we met with the county and agreed that we should work together. Things seem to have changed now, so I think we have more work to do, including more conversations with the county commissioners and more review of these proposed resolutions. So with that, I'd say let's move on to our next issue here. And the next item of business is support of Thurston Climate Action Plan. Oh no, budget. All right. Oh, this is going to be another big one. Okay.
Can I interrupt for just a second, Commissioner
You
Zeta?
bet.
I think that what we have here is a document that we need to move forward with. I don't think we need to keep hashing this thing out past what we've done. I think this document covers what the intent was. All I brought up was options that could go forward after this resolution has been signed. It then allows for other options to happen should things change in the future, which could or could not happen. So I don't see dragging this thing out another couple of meetings and hassling over it with the county. I think Felicia's done a good job of putting together a document with some changes that you have suggested and some changes that Commissioner Downing has suggested. And I think we need to just bring it forward at some future meeting. So hopefully before the end of the year. So I think it's entirely possible to do that. So thank you. That's my stance on it.
2 commissioners seem to agree that this is ready to come for action. I disagree. It is inconsistent with what we agreed with the county commission. So I will be asking the county commission for their input on this. Next up, we have the budget.
Okay, good evening, commissioners. I'm Matt Peach, Senior Administrative Services Manager. Next slide, please. Tonight's agenda, we'll be reviewing the upcoming budget schedule, our 2022 budget assumptions, our capital investment plan, budget overview, operating budgets by business line, tax levy and non-ops, including environmental commission and other non-operating expenses, and lastly, any questions and comments. Next slide, please. We have held budget briefings on October 4th, 11th, and 18th. Tonight, we're having an advisory on the 2022 proposed operating budget, capital investment plan, and tax levy. November 8th, we will have our public hearing on those same items. Next slide, please. November 15th, we have a work session for final review if necessary. And lastly, on November 22nd, we will have our final adoption of the 2022 operating budget, capital investment plan, and tax levy. Next slide, please. Our 2022 budget assumptions and focus was take action now, planning for our future, and align our strategic goals. Our budget sees overall revenue increase of 8% and an increase to gross operating income of 3%. I know the slide says 4.6%, but after our changes from last Monday, it decreased to 3%. The budget includes a 3.1% merit pool increase and no additional staffing. The budget also reflects our continued response to the global pandemic and economic disruption that has been created as a result. And I won't read this on every slide, but it is and has been a consideration in every aspect of this budget. Next slide, please. Our port-wide initiatives include creating a 5-year strategic plan and annual action plan, creating an integrated Port Peninsula development plan, a continued emphasis on our unified maintenance approach, and working on additional response for climate resilience. Next slide, please. The highlights of our capital investment plan include design and permitting of our Marine Center building, which includes our admin offices and marine offices, as well as space for mission-driven and nonprofit organizations. Our RV resort design and permitting, shared maintenance design and permitting for their facility, grant-funded marine terminal paving, and lastly, an IT cybersecurity and infrastructure project. Next slide, please. Our non-operations budget includes commission expenses, environmental costs, harbor patrol, public amenities, and other non-operations costs. The budget includes resources for implementing a strategic plan that complements our capital investment plan, and our operations budgets include maintenance and repair costs. Next slide, please. Reviewing our 2022 capital investment plan, the capital budget shows costs of $2.8 million, with $861,000 of those costs covered by grants, leaving funds required from cash reserves of $1.96 million. And I would anticipate our capital investment plan being adjusted some for the public hearing, as we have another project we are working on to determine costs that builds on a 2021 project at the Marina for some additional electrical upgrades. Next slide, please. Reviewing our 2022 statutory budget, we start with projected end of year cash for 2021 of $12.561 million, anticipating operating revenues of $14.352 million, operating expenses of $12,077,000, with funds provided by operations of $2.275 million, tax revenues of $7.156 million, other net expenses of $2.475 million, our debt service is $4.6 million, and our capital investments of $1.963 million, leaving ending projected cash of $12,943,000. Next slide, please. Here's our projected ending cash and working capital for 2022. Total cash is $12.9 million, with cash reserved of $6 million, leaving $6.9 million of working capital. Next slide, please. We will review each business unit individually, so I will only touch on the totals here. Our combined operating budget results in $14.352 million in operating revenues, operations and maintenance expenses of $9.678 million, and admin expenses of $2.399 million, leaving cash from operations of $2.275 million. Adding depreciation creates a net operating loss of $1.594 million. Next slide, please. Reviewing the operating revenues, expenses, and income as compared to 2022 actual, the 2021 budget, and 2021 projected actual numbers results in similar returns as prior years, with revenues increasing as well as expenses, and a slight increase to our income before depreciation. Next slide, please. The next several slides focus on the individual business units, starting with the airport, New Market, and Clean Water Center. We have budgeted operating revenues of $3.39 million, operating expenses of $2.268 million, with our income before depreciation of $1.12 million, and we add depreciation results in net income of $158,000. And the capital investment plan for the airport is budgeted at $220,000. Next slide, please. Here are the 2022 operating revenues, expenses, and operating income presented with a comparison to 2020 actual numbers, 2021 budget, and 2021 projected actual. Next slide, please. Reviewing the Marina, Boatworks, and Fuel Dock budgets, we have operating revenues of $4.13 million, operating expenses of $3.69 million, income before depreciation of $431,000, and adding depreciation results in a net loss of $218,000. And the capital investment plan for the airport includes $201,000. Next slide, please. And similar to the airport, here are the 2022 operating revenues, expenses, and operating income presented with a comparison to the 2020 actual, 2021 budget, and 21 projected actual. Next slide, please. Reviewing the marine terminal budget, we have operating revenues of 5.2 million, operating expenses of 4.6 million, income before depreciation of 563,000, and adding depreciation creates a net loss of 1.2 million. The capital investment plan for the marine terminal includes $1,010,000. Next slide, please. The 2022 operating revenues, expenses, and operating income presented with a comparison to the 2020 actual, 2021 budget, and 21 projected actual. Next slide, please. Reviewing our real estate and business budget, we have operating revenues of 1.6 million, operating expenses of 1.4 million, income before depreciation of 157,000, and we add depreciation, creating a net loss of 205,000. And the capital investment plan for the real estate department includes 750,000. Next slide, please. And again, a comparison of our 2022 operating revenues, expenses, and operating income compared to our 2020 actual, 21 budget, and 21 projected actual. Next slide, please. Our total general and administrative costs are 2.487 million. 59% of those are costs are salaries and benefits. Outside professional services make up 17%. Our leasing costs are 7%, and the remaining 17% are supplies, utilities, and other administrative costs. Next slide, please. The general and administrative costs are spread out across the various business units, including 26% to the airport and Swantown operations, 28% to the marine terminal, 17% to real estate, and 3% to our environmental budget. Next slide, please. Our 2021 proposed tax levy calculation based on the most recent correspondence from Thurston County for assessed values across the county. Additionally, Thurston County has provided us with information regarding our administrative refund for 2022 and our projected construction. Both columns reflect our 2021 tax levy with a 1% increase over prior year levy of $69,369, as well as levy for new construction of $124,262 and an administrative refund of $25,331. The center column reflects a proposed 2022 tax levy of 7.156 million, and the column on the right reflects additional revenue should the port accept 239,000 in bank capacity for a total levy of 7.395 million. Both columns reflect a decrease in the millage rate or the effective rate charged per $1,000 of value that the port receives in tax revenue. Next slide, please. The uses of our tax levy are as follows and reflect the changes as outlined in last week's work session. Again, the tax levy of 7.156 million. Those costs paid for by that tax levy include our principal and interest on our GO bonds of 4.6 million, environmental costs of 1.45 million, community events 47,000, our public amenities 253,000, harbor patrol and small cities costs of 76,000. And then we have special projects, including our ballot proposition and election costs, 5-member redistricting of 150,000 total, so our Centennial events of 76,000, and a strategic plan of 65,000. And our commission expense of 438,000, resulting in a total use of taxes of 7.1 million, and leaving a net zero of additional funds available. And next slide, please. And with that, I'll take any questions and comments. Thank you.
Fellow commissioners, questions, comments?
Well, I'll go first. Thanks, Matt, for giving this. And so there's, as we get different presentation at each meeting, we see more refined numbers. I appreciate you continuing to hone in on those. And I take it we'll get a new slide with that one that you said you just found a couple of days ago, where something which impacted the increase. And I can't remember which slide that was right off the bat. As you look at.
Yeah, Commissioner, we did move up some. We did adjust the capital investment. We will plan. We will change it additionally for those other costs we're considering once we get some budgeted amounts. And I will be running a new budget with updated numbers tomorrow and the rest of the week.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate all the hard work, not only that you have to put in and bringing all these numbers together, but also the directors and for feeding in those numbers to you. And so anyway, I thank you. And I think we had a good discussion the other day at our special meeting on the budget. And I think we had made good progress. So thank you for your energy and getting these things all together. Thanks.
Commissioner Downing?
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Matt, for putting these slides together. Can you go to slide 9, please? The capital investment plan. So on this slide, I just want to say that at a prior meeting when we talked about the budget, I know that, what's that company? It's just the name of the company that makes the sweeper. They make an electric version of that sweeper. So hopefully, you know, I know that we're not approving the sweeper purchase tonight. We're approving the capital plan, but it'd be good to have as accurate numbers as possible. So I would appreciate it if port staff could look at an electric sweeper, and if that meets the requirements of the WAP settlement, we can go with an electric sweeper. In the maintenance area, I see that maintenance department is suggesting a e-transit cargo van, which is electric. And I didn't have time to look at tractors and mowers and whether or not those could be electric as well, but might as well look at it. But I'm mostly concerned about the sweeper. I know it's a big ticket item. It's probably more expensive to begin with, but I know for a fact that electric vehicles are less maintenance than diesel vehicles. So I appreciate that. Can you go to slide 20? I have a question on slide 20. Oh, so can you refresh my memory? Do you have any idea what probably the real estate, I think I answered my own question, but the real estate capital investment plan for 750,000. Oh, I see. I answered my own question because it's back on slide 9. You don't have to go back there, but it's the 500,000 for the Marina admin office and 250,000 for RV resort infrastructure. Okay, thank you. One more slide, slide 24, please. So I think the commissioners talked about this, but at least a couple of the commissioners are not, interested in using bank capacity this year. So I just want to make that comment, but that's all. I mean, so far it looks good, better every time, but I just want to make a couple comments there. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Commissioner Downing. Mr. Peach, thanks again for all your careful work putting these numbers and information together. Commissioner Downing's correct that he and I are not interested in taking bank capacity this year. And at our meeting last week, Commissioner Downing and I both expressed reservations about taking the 1% increase as well. If we could find $69,000 in savings somewhere, we could avoid raising people's taxes 1%. Commissioner Downing had asked, and we had affirmed that people's taxes are going to go up because the values of their homes go up. And if we take that 1% increase, taxes will go up even further. So if we can find $69,000 in savings somewhere, we could avoid that additional increase in port taxes. We have not identified a place for it yet, but I have some ideas. So let me go through my list of questions here. So I'm sure you have told us more than once, Mr. Peach, but just refresh my memory. On lots of slides here, we have net income. And does that net income include taxes, income from taxes?
Which slide are you referring to, Commissioner? Like the business units?
Yes, that's right.
Does it include taxes revenue in their net income? Is
Yes,
that what you're asking? No, it does not.
that's right. Okay, so that's just from operations, not from
Correct.
taxes. Great. So that's income before taxes. And let's just take a look at one of those slides, just for example. Well, we could just look at the overall one on slide 13. For the whole port, we have revenue, operations, maintenance, administration, income before depreciation. And does debt appear on there anywhere?
It does not.
And would you remind us what our debt payments are?
Yeah, our debt payment shows up on the non-ops. It's 4.6 million.
So that would just be subtracted from the income before depreciation. So that turns the 2.2 million into minus 4.6 million, turns it into a minus 2 point something million, 2.2 something million. Is that right?
Well, except that it shows up in the non-operating section under tax revenues.
Okay. Let's see. On slide 14, the very next one, this is airport, new market, and clean water. I know you've told us this before, but just remind me, please, does this one include new market, or is it the real estate? Does this one include Panettone, or is it the real estate slide that includes Panettone?
Well, Panettone is not reflected in the budget at this point. However, it will, if it should happen, it would show up in this budget. But again, it's not budgeted for 2022.
So last Thursday, there was a meeting with Tumwater. Panettone and Tumwater met to discuss this 450,000 square foot building on 30 acres. And if they were to move forward with that, one of the things I think that we would owe, I mean, in addition to habitat conservation, is we would owe a commission to Kidder Matthews for that parcel. So that would come out of our budget whenever that gets approved. Is that right?
I don't believe so. No, I think it's related to whenever the sale happens or the lease agreement happens.
Right. So they're looking at getting that first parcel leased, and they're going through the details with Tumwater. So at some point, we would owe Kidder Matthews their commission on that.
That would be offset by the revenue as a result.
And that would appear in the budget whenever the lease is approved for that particular parcel. Executive Director Gibney, you wanted to say something?
Yes, as Mr. Peach has stated, we have not estimated a actual lease transaction in this budget. Should that transpire in 2022, and it is possible that it would transpire, then our forecast would be adjusted accordingly. But these numbers do not reflect any type of leasing arrangements with Panettone in 2022.
It sounds like there's a fair amount of work to be done before that parcel gets leased, based on the Tumwater discussion. Let's see. All right. When we went through the commission budget last week, my understanding was that the Excel sheets from that discussion were going to be shared with us, and I'm sorry if I missed it, if those were sent to us.
Mhm. I think they were. I think I got something.
Did you? Yeah? Those came through?
I think so. Sam, Executive Director Gibney, could you, did those go out the commission Excel worksheet?
I believe I did, but I will double check, Commissioner Zeta, and make sure that you received those, but I do believe I sent those out, but I will double check and resend.
I'd be grateful. Thank you so much for doing that. All right, any further questions or comments from the commission before we move on to our next item? All right, thanks again, Mr. Peach, for all your work on this and for helping us stay informed. So our next item on today's agenda is budget support of Thurston Climate Action Plan.
Yes, and Sheila, if you can bring over our POCAC member.
All righty.
Well, I think, Sam, you're listed for item 3, the
And,
resolution.
yeah, and it's just for me to make an introduction to
Great.
our POCAC member, Tom Schmonick.
Great.
Sometimes it takes a minute. Not sure if it's a connection issue. I'm trying.
I'm sure having connection issues tonight. Might be too. Executive Director, can you maybe get us started here?
Certainly. And
Oh, there we go.
here we go. Here
Here
comes
we go.
Tom.
Great. Welcome, Tom. We're looking forward to hearing about the climate plan support and framework for action. I think Executive Director Gibney is going to introduce the resolution, the draft resolution.
Yes. Thank you for Mr. Schmoniak for joining us. And there are two items today. The first is the resolution that the POCAC has crafted with the help of Ms. Brown, offering general support for the work that has been done on the Thurston County Climate Action Plan. And Tom, I don't want to steal your thunder, so I'll turn it over to you. Did we lose you? Must be this downpour that we're all experiencing right now.
Mhm.
So while we're waiting, and Tom, you can interrupt me at any point and take over here, but I will just say that the POCAC has worked with Ms. Brown to craft this resolution offering support of the work of the Thurston County and the 4 major parties that are actually parties to this agreement, and offering support for this resolution and the climate adaptation and mitigation measures recommended therein. So the commission has it in its packet. I did offer some just minor editorial comments on the draft, just to add for clarity and readability. And so looking for input from the commission on this issue so we can bring it back for your consideration at the next meeting.
Well, I'll start. My thanks to the POCAC for working on this, and for port staff for helping to put this together. I think it's infinitely important that Thurston County work as a unified body in adapting and preventing and minimizing climate change. I mean, it crosses all political and every other kind of boundary there is, because it's what do they call that word? Anyway, it's a threat to the entire world. And I only have one suggestion. There's a typo exactly in the middle of the page where it talks about reducing gas emissions to a level 45% below the 2015 level by 2030 and 85% by, should be 2050, not 2950. That's my only edit.
Oh, it looks like Tom has joined us.
Yeah, to reboot.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Yeah.
there he is. Hi, Tom.
Yeah, hi.
Any other input you'd like to offer the POCAC so they can make some revisions and bring it back at the next meeting?
Well, we just received this document this afternoon, so it may be that commissioners need a little more time to look at it. But I would like to thank the POCAC for their work on this. Commissioner McGregor?
Commissioner McGregor, you're muted.
There, am I on now?
Yes.
Too many mute buttons. Anyway, I think that Commissioner Downing has pointed out what I found, which was the year in that one paragraph should be 2050, not 2950. But other than that, I think they've done a good job on this, and I don't have any additional edits. I think it meets the intent of what we were asking, and Tom and his panel have done a good job of bringing it forward. And Tom, I'm sorry you're having trouble with the bandwidth tonight. So it looks like we do need to do something about broadband here in this community. And maybe you're a prime example, as well as Commissioner Zeta, because she's been having width problems as well. So with that, I'll mute myself.
Okay, well, I want to thank my fellow commissioners for their support of this very important work that the POCAC subcommittee has undertaken. I have one question about the Port of Olympia Commission resolution. It's page 36 in our packet. It says, whereas the subcommittee members of the POCAC will review the Thurston County Climate Mitigation Plan. Is this meant to be covering the past? Because they have reviewed it, right, Tom? You've done the review. Is this supposed to say the subcommittee members of the POCAC did review? Go ahead, Tom.
We started this many months ago, and it's just taken a long time to get here. And we're still reviewing the plan, you might say, in order to develop the framework. And so it's an ongoing process. There's a lot of things that change in that plan. I think everybody should keep looking at that plan as we start to look at the framework and how you're going to, bring it across to the port and accept it. But we did start this a long time ago, and the intent was this was the first thing, and then we would do the framework. And so you're certainly welcome to change the language, but at the time that we thought that was appropriate.
So, Mr. Simoniak, do you see your work as the POCAC subcommittee as continuing beyond today on this particular task?
I think you'll see the framework. There's certain things in there that you could assign different topics back to the advisory committee and how we actually implement that. it's really going to be a combination of staff, whether or not they think they can do that. But there may be topics that we may be able to help, flesh out maybe better with staff's help.
So you see this as a first step, and we should keep that language in the whereas that the POCAC will continue to review the TCMP or action items. That's your recommendation?
Yeah, I think so, because, like the city of Olympia hired a person now, and that's their job. They're
Mhm.
still trying to figure out how they're going to implement it themselves. And so, I see it kind of evolving. And so I think it's probably important that you have us, the Citizens Advisory Committee, kind of keep check of that and provide guidance as appropriate.
That's great. Well, we certainly value your close look at the climate mitigation plan and helping alert us to ways that the port can do our part. Would you recommend that we follow the City of Olympia's suit and hire somebody?
I looked at your greenhouse gases, and you don't have a lot, and most of that, I think you're going to find like you're trying to replace with electric vehicles. There may be some other things that you can do with properties, and again, I'm not familiar with it. So at this point, I'm not sure you need to hire a full-time person like the city, because the climate plan really is changing. It's going to change building codes, and that's going to be a huge task, and the port really can't do that. And I don't know how much the port actually has for buildings, let's say, that they actually manage or own. They have very few, but they own a lot of land. And so I think there may be things that could be done in those lease agreements. But again, that may be something that current staff could take care of without having to hire somebody, and then use the Citizens Advisory Committee maybe as a mechanism, maybe to help flesh out specific things.
Great. So I appreciate that you've done this careful look as a first pass, and it sounds like you would like to continue the work to continue to make specific suggestions. Is that right?
That's right. You'll
Okay.
see in that next memo that we put together, there's some top categories in there that I think, that we could still provide some input on with staff's help.
Great. Okay. Well, I'm sure that all the commissioners look forward to taking a closer look at this since we just got it this afternoon, and we'll be in contact. And thanks to you, Mr. Zamoniak, and Kevin Decker and Joel Hansen for all your good work on this. All right.
Commissioner Zeta, Sam's got her hand up.
Yes, go ahead, Executive Director.
Commissioner Zeta, just for clarity's sake, I wanted to make sure that you're looking at the right document. There are two documents. One was included in when the packet was produced last week, and that's this resolution. What was added today was the memo that Tom's going to talk about next. So this document was in the packet a week ago. So just making sure you had the document straight.
I thought we were talking about both of them. Sorry. All right. Next, we have Tom talking about the climate plan support and framework for action. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I just want to thank you.
I jumped the gun on that. I thought we were already here.
Yeah, I really appreciate you as commissioners taking this late addition to the agenda. And I'm sorry it's so confusing. As you know, my name is Tom Smoniak, and I'm a member of the Port of Olympia Citizens Advisory, and the subcommittee formed to develop a white paper on the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan. This was one of the various projects that we were tasked with back in January. As we previously discussed, our first task was to meet with port staff and ascertain the best method for the port to support the climate plan. As a result, we worked with Alicia Brown and Sam Gibney to write the resolution of support. You previously heard about that draft, and we hope that you can advance that and get the necessary signatures and move that forward as exponentially as possible. Our second task was to review the climate mitigation plan and see how this could be supported by the port. The attached memo describes our process in developing this framework. And basically what we did as a subcommittee is we split up, we independently reviewed that. There's various action items split up into different sectors that described in the memo. And we independently kind of evaluated those about what the port could support. And we came back together as a group. And when we all agreed on something, then that kind of moved it ahead. That was something that we thought the port could do. When there was only two agreed on it, we negotiated basically to try to convince the other person maybe that's something that the port could do. So basically the list you see in attachment A of that is those that all three members of the subcommittee basically agreed to. And it's the complete list. It has all the recommendations for the building and energy, the transportation and land use, and the cross-cutting. Water and wastewater and agriculture really kind of fell out of the loop, you might say. And what you'll see in the tables is what we thought was we wanted to advance, give you the highest impact in the greenhouse gas emissions. And so the plan actually had categories of rankings from 5 being the highest impact and 4 being a medium to high. And so the tables that are presented in here are those actions that are 5s and the 4s. And so the list in the attachment has all the categories that we went through. But what we did was we brought forward to you the 5s and the 4s, the ones that have the greatest impact for reducing greenhouse gases. So tables 1 through 3 basically go through those, and they present those that we think have the highest ability to reduce greenhouse gases and that should be looked at by the staff to see how you can implement those. So I'm happy to take any questions you might have. I know it's a lot to absorb in a quick time. We try to compress it down into a table. We gave you our comments of how you, the staff, and the commission might implement those various strategies. So I'm happy to take any questions you might have, or you'll come back at another date.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Simoniak. Commissioner Downing, Commissioner McGregor.
Well, thank you, Tom, for this description and explanation. And it helps to know that these are the top most important and thank you for weeding through the many action items to come up with the ones that might be most relevant to port activities. Do appreciate that. So then therefore the strategy column, that numbering system, does that come straight from the climate action report?
Yes, it does. Those are the actual strategies, the numbering sequence they have. So the B is the building and energy.
Okay.
T is for transportation. And then G, I think, is the cross-cutting. And those are really what we came down to, the 3 tables that would probably give you the highest.
Okay. Well, I think this is a great guiding document as the port goes forward with the kinds of things that we can do to build that into our strategic plan or everyday plans so that we're more in alignment with the overall Thurston climate action plan. That's great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Tom, for this information. There's a lot of information in here, and I just need to take some more time to study all this and get some benchmarks out of the plan itself and see how the port might be able to use it. I think you've done a good job of bringing everything together here and trying to summarize it for us, and I do appreciate that and the effort that has gone into this by the POCAC. And I assume this has gone back to the general to the overall POCAC from the subcommittee, so that they've had a look at it and have also approved bringing it forward. Is that correct?
It went out to them on Friday. Got some comments back from a few of them. We're a little short-handed right now, as you might guess. So we're hoping that we'll have some more people that will be able to join the committee. Basically, it was 2 of us that worked on this, and then we had comments from about 2 or 3 others from the overall committee.
Good.
So that, we could have spent a little more time on it. It just seemed like it would be worthwhile to get this in your hands sooner.
Very good. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks, Tom.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Simoniak. I'm going to go through your tables that you called to our attention and highlight a few things that we have, the commissioners have already discussed possibly doing. For example, on page 40 of our packet, your table 1 strategy B5.5, collaborate with Olympia Community Solar. We agreed to do that last year, and I hope we will follow through on that commitment this year. On the next page, T513, partner on broadband projects. We are poised to approve a memorandum of understanding with the county's broadband action team. And Commissioner McGregor has a funding structure in mind that I trust we'll be discussing again soon. On the next page, strategy G4.6, develop and adopt policies that require the use of a social cost of carbon measure in zoning, development, construction, and transportation decisions. This is a powerful strategy. And if the POCAC is interested in pursuing this, I would strongly support your doing this. Do you want another task, or are you raring to go independently on this? You tell me, Mr. Simoniak.
I'd have to look into it some more, but I think it's important. It's a 5, category 5, in terms of the, the social cost. And, I think this is something that's going to, and Washington State may be a leader in how we do this. So I think that I certainly would be interested in looking into it some more.
Right. So there's a lot of leadership in Washington State, of course, on these things right now, and a lot of new resources. And your very next item, legislative agenda, work with the Washington Public Port Association. They're on it. They are tracking the resources that are coming available to ports to take advantage of the new money from the legislature. So they're a resource for us. On the next page, buildings and energy, reducing energy use across building types. When I was still teaching, I had a master's student who did an internship with the city of Tumwater, and he inventoried their energy use in buildings and made recommendations about how they could save money, make the buildings more attractive for people to work in, and save energy. And they implemented his top items and met all those goals. So they have better lighting, more comfortable buildings, and they're saving a lot of money. And we could do that.
One of the recommendations I saw in the greenhouse gas is that, and I'm assuming the marine terminal, you guys are using the leadership in energy and environmental design as a strategy where you're trying to make it into a gold or platinum. So those are very important that you do that at the very front and set those lead goals at the outset of a project, like whatever the Marine Center I saw in the budget for 500,000. You really need to track those and go after the lead goals that are there. And there is money out there that could, provide grant money for some of those sustainable items.
I'm not sure that we are pursuing lead. We certainly should, you're right. And we need to pursue lead platinum, because most lead silver buildings do not save energy. They do other good sustainable things, but they tend not to save much energy. So we need the really high standards of LEED certification to also be saving energy. That's a great suggestion, Mr. Simoniak. Increasing the production of local renewable energy, B5. Again, supporting community solar.
if I could, this, you see the GHG impact, that's the greenhouse gas. And
Right,
so you can see that those are 3s and 4s. We only
Right.
brought forward in the table the 4s and the 5s.
yeah,
But this is the 3 of us in the committee. This is the list we thought the port could implement. You look at LED lighting,
Yep.
cool roofs. Those are all things you can do if you have the inventory and you start to negotiate on what the lease agreements are for different buildings that the port
that's great.
leases.
Yeah, I think that our roofs out at the Lacey CDC need some work, and looking at doing cool roofs out there sounds like a really good idea. The transportation and land use, T3, you've heard a lot of interest on the commission in adoption of electric vehicles. On page 44 of
So
the,
the other thing I will add,
yeah,
we talked about this last year, is the infrastructure is so important that you really need to know what's at the port in terms of, can you support electric recharging stations out there in terms of the bigger vehicles that may require those quick loads. And so you really need to have a good inventory of your electrical needs and demands, at the port. And maybe that's already been done, but last year we did the shore power, we really couldn't find it.
that's a really important point, Mr. Zamoniak, that we need to do our planning and analysis before we just build things, so that we know we're doing the right things. A very important step that sometimes we forget to do. And I appreciate that the POCAC evaluated the opportunities for shore power on the marine terminal and found that it was not a great opportunity out there, but we probably have better opportunities elsewhere in our real estate.
Yes.
Thanks for that reminder. Yeah. Let's see. Under agriculture, forests and prairies, in the middle of page 44, preserve tree canopy and manage forests and prairies to sequester carbon. We have a big opportunity to preserve tree canopy in the Newmarket Industrial Campus in Tumwater. There's over 100 acres of urban forest, Tumwater's largest urban forest, and we have an opportunity to preserve that urban forest. I hope we will. So thank you so much, Mr. Zamoniak, for your work, and with Mr. Decker and Joel Hansen.
Yeah.
And we would be delighted if you are able to continue this, and I hope that the commission will make good use of your great research.
Thank you. I'll relay that back to Kevin and Joel.
Thank you.
Again, they were very helpful in advancing this and pulling it all together.
Anything else on this item before we move to the next one?
Yep, good.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Mr. Simoniak.
Thanks, Tom.
All right. We're moving to 5 out of 6 on the advisory calendar. It's a really long one tonight. Rudy Rudolph, the Port Operations Director, will discuss the FAA requirements for Newmarket Industrial Campus properties. Rudy, take it away.
Good evening, Commissioners. I think I remembered to unmute myself. I'm Rudy Rudolph. For those who may be viewing who do not know me, I'm the Port Operations Director. I'm also in my 18th year serving as your Airport Director, and in my 30th year of dealing with the Federal Aviation Administration, airports, and compliance matters. I'm here tonight to share with you the requirements set forth in FAA Order 5190.6B, which is the Airport Compliance Manual. And it specifically discusses the laws, regulations, policies, and procedures pertaining to the airport sponsor requirements. Airport sponsor is a term for us as the airport owner operator. Airport sponsor requests for release from federal obligations for property acquired under the Surplus Property Act. So I'm going to talk about a couple of general items, and then I'm going to go into some specific items. And what I'm reading you tonight or discussing with you tonight is not my opinion. It is basically, it is outlining for you those procedures that are outlined in the compliance manual. So it states in the compliance manual, procedures that the FAA must follow when evaluating a release request for surplus property. A proposal must clearly show that the disposal of such property will benefit civil aviation. And if any such property is no longer needed to support an airport purpose or activity directly, including the generation of revenue for the airport, the property may be released for sale or disposal upon a demonstration that such disposal will produce an equal or greater benefit to the airport than the continued retention of the land. So getting down into some specifics here, and I realize this is a little dry, but please bear with me. An airport sponsor should demonstrate the following in its proposal to the FAA: why the disposal will not be in excess of the present and foreseeable needs of the airport, why this proposed property release will not adversely affect the development, improvement, operation, or maintenance of the airport where the land is located, describe how the conversion of the property asset into cash better serves the purpose for which the real property was initially conveyed. This objective requires the airport to receive an amount equal to the current fair market value of the property as a consequence of the release, and that such amount is committed to airport purposes. The airport sponsor must describe how more value may be obtained from a disposal of the specific parcel than the retention of the parcel for revenue production under leasing. In addition, the sponsor must include the following in its request: a description of any intangible benefits the airport will realize from the release, applying the intangible benefits as an offset against the fair market value of the property to be released. And there's a specific note that says only benefits to the airport may be cited as justification for the release, whether tangible or intangible. The non-aviation interest of the sponsor or the local community, such as making land available for economic development or other factors, does not constitute an airport benefit that can be considered in justifying a release and disposal by the FAA. If the FAA is agreeable to the property release and the disposal, there may be additional steps and submittals to ensure consistency with certain other sections of the compliance manual and NEPA requirements as well. So that's a lot of FAA verbiage, but those are the regulations that govern the release of surplus property. And I'd be glad to try and answer any questions for you.
So, Mr. Rudolph, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing anything in our packet about this. Do we have any slides or summaries or anything, or any documents?
We do not. And Executive Director Givney, did you want to address that?
Certainly. No, Commissioner Downing asked to have this item added today, and to do so without any materials or things. He just wanted to discuss the topic.
I would really welcome the opportunity to discuss this topic when we have some things to look at, because I don't know about you, but I find it difficult to absorb all this information when it's just read to us. So I appreciate that this has come before us today, and I thank the Olympian for calling this to our attention. This is something that we had the opportunity to move forward on this summer, and staff informed commissioners that it would be scheduled for discussion this summer, and this is our first opportunity to discuss it. So it would be great to have a discussion and see how we can follow up on our letter to the FAA requesting, trying to find out how we could help the Oyo Hotel become long-term housing for low-income seniors. It would be great to see how we could do that and have a conversation about that when we have some materials in front of us.
Commissioner, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Commissioner, what I've just read to you is the procedures. These came directly from the FAA when we inquired to them. So this is their answer. And they've established a pretty clear bar that you can draw your own conclusion whether we're going to be able to meet that standard. So
it would be useful to have those materials before us to read and discuss. And Mr. Chance, Craig Chance, from this senior housing had some responses to that. Representative Marilyn Strickland had offered some support in moving forward on that. And it would be useful if we had all that information to discuss. I think Commissioner Downing, and then we'll just give both commissioners a chance to reply, and then the executive director may weigh in.
Well, thanks, Commissioner Zeta. This has been in the background. This project of the Oya Hotel has been in the background. And in case you don't know, the port collaborated with Congressman Strickland to write a letter to the FAA. Not sure what anything stronger than a United States Congresswoman writing a letter to the FAA to sway them. The public should know that over $20 million of FAA grants are at stake. The FAA has helped support our airport, the Olympia Airport, as a civil aviation airport. And in return for those many, many grants, we have to abide by their rules. And so I think that what Rudy spelled out, among other things, was that any change in their rules and any reduction in the property that is used to support the airport would have to, for example, benefit civil aviation. So Rudy, as our airport director, has waded through that and decided there's no possible way that we as a port could sway the FAA to part with this property. And so, you know, because a residential use is not within the FAA guidelines, the FAA is not going to be swayed. So I just like to make that point of what our relationship is with the FAA. I'd like to make the point that Congresswoman Strickland wrote a letter to the FAA mid-year, trying to convince them to make an exception for this property. And I think that, you know, all three commissioners are strongly in favor of whatever we can do to advance the cause of housing in Thurston County. And finally, you know, I'd just like to know, you know, well, I think that's basically it, that the congressman came to bat for us, and the commissioners are, all three of us are in favor of advancing the cause of housing, and the FAA is the big sticking block in this situation. So, you know, that's basically a good review of, I think, where we stand on this issue.
I didn't hear Mr. Rudolph say that this is impossible, that we couldn't meet the FAA's requirements. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Rudolph?
If you're asking for my professional assessment, that would we be successful in this attempt, my professional assessment is no. We will not be able to demonstrate what they are requiring us to demonstrate under the compliance guidelines.
But in fact, we haven't tried. Is that correct?
We have not submitted a request, but you asked whether I thought that would be successful.
Well, Commissioner Downing put those words into your mouth, so I thought I'd just get your clarification on that. I think it's Commissioner McGregor's turn.
Well, you know, we asked staff to at least petition the FAA, and we started that process back in June. We know from previous petitions that other ports have made to them. Port of Bellingham, I believe, was one that had a building they wanted to convert to a use for a center of some type, and they petitioned the FAA. I think there was another port that did the same thing, and the answer was basically the same, that they wouldn't allow it within the confines of airport property by the FAA. And so we did ask Marilyn Strickland to interject on our behalf. She apparently wrote a letter and tried to sway that one way or another. These are, and apparently that was not successful either. And I don't know how much resource we want to throw at something such as this. I think it's important to have facilities for them, but I just don't see that that's going to be a high obstacle, how it would benefit the airport for doing something with this property other than what it's being used for today.
Executive Director Giving.
Yes, I just wanted to remind the commission that indeed you were provided with the correspondence from the FAA when we received it. I forwarded that to the commission in July, so you should have that in your inboxes. I'm happy to resend it if you'd like to for your convenience. But you know, we did forward it along with our assessment that indeed the hurdles for as set forth by the FAA were quite high, if not entirely insurmountable, and so have not proceeded with any follow-up actions to this. So, but just so you know, you do have these documents, and but if you'd like for me to resend them, I'd be happy to do so.
Yes, we have these documents. Mr. Rudolph received these documents on June 29th and forwarded them promptly to the executive director, and the executive director forwarded them 3 weeks later to the commissioners, saying these are high standards, and that the executive director and Commissioner Downing would work together to schedule further consideration of the matter by the commission. And that was July, and this is almost November. And I appreciate that this has come before us now, though the supporting documents have not come before us at this time. So while our discussion of this matter is many months delayed, it's great that we're finally discussing it. So I propose that we go through the list of requirements that Mr. Rudolph has shared with us, when we can actually look at them together, when they're published in the packet, and that we consider how we might be able to meet the FAA's requirements. For example, there are people living at the hotel now. There would be people living at the new facility. It's not clear that there's any real change in status as far as people living there. There needs to be a financial benefit to the port. Mr. Chance has suggested ways that could possibly be worked out. We should look at his response and work with Mr. Chance and see how that could be worked out. In our strategic plan that we adopted in 2016, our goals are basically the triple bottom line: economic, environmental, and community benefit. And this has the potential to meet all three of those goals. Commissioner Downing says that all three commissioners are interested in helping provide housing for people who have insecure housing. That's the first time I've heard that the other commissioners are interested in this, but that's great if you are. And if you are, we have an opportunity to act on this opportunity presenting to us by Mr. Chance. Let's look at how we might meet the FAA's requirements. Let's do that work. Let's try. We haven't tried. Do my fellow commissioners support me in doing this?
feels like we're revisiting an issue that we've already talked about, but subject to port staff time, I would be open to reconsidering I'm sure it's some sort of long application that Rudy would have to, or his staff would have to fill out, saying Port of Olympia would like to take these 2 acres out of FAA jurisdiction. We think that it'll benefit aviation or benefit this or benefit that. As I recall from prior discussions, there's also a downside to even making the application. So, I'd be in favor of, at a future commission meeting, again, this is only advisory tonight, but I'd be in favor of looking at that more thoroughly, as Commissioner Zeta says, some documents in the packet that we could look at and provide the upside and the downside to even making a further application on this topic.
Commissioner McGregor. Oh, you're muted.
A little slow on the unmute button, but I'm getting there, Commissioner. I remember being for this back in June when we said we can always ask the question. We won't know if we're going to get the answer we want, but we're going to get an answer. And I think Rudy has talked about what that answer was today. I think I would like to see maybe get that letter and some of the backup that we had back in June, because I didn't keep any of it at this point. But I think we need to also look at how much time and staff resources are we going to have to put towards this to meet whatever those demands of the standards that the FAA is asking. And what are the downsides? Let's revisit that and make sure we understand what the upside and the downside is. And as far as people living out there, what you've alluded to, I don't know if they are. I don't have that for a fact, but they're supposed to be transient uses out there. But in any event, I don't want to belabor that part of it. I would like to have something maybe in a month, come back with information, as you suggested, Commissioner Zeta, but nonetheless, we can have another discussion on it.
That I fully support that suggestion, that we revisit that, say, in another month. In fact, it would be our first discussion as a commission of the specifics in this FAA response that was provided to port staff in June. It would be our first discussion, not another discussion. And so it's long overdue, and let's do it. I'm glad we're in agreement. Very good. All right, any further comments before we move on to the next item? Great. Finally, the last advisory item, number 6, public comment and commission response. So Carla Wolfsberg has her hand up. Go ahead, Ms. Wolfsberg. Ms. Wolfsberg is muted there. Now you're unmuted. Great.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Okay. So my comments are in response to the earlier discussion about the 5 port commissioners. So I would just strongly encourage the commission to collaborate with Thurston County commissioners and not for the port to move forward on its own in a direction that could potentially result in a redistricting effort. This just makes no sense to me. The port has no expertise in redistricting, nor should they. The county auditor's office has all the expertise that's really needed for redistricting. So, and the port will possibly spend maybe twice as much of taxpayer dollars than is needed. Sharing these expenses makes really good sense, and it's just a more prudent approach for expending taxpayer dollars. So I've just not heard a clear, rational explanation by either Commissioners Downing or McGregor as to why the port should move forward on its own. It makes me very much question what's going on, what motivations are here, what agendas are here for avoiding good collaboration and cost sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolfsberg. Any other public comment? Raise your hand. And Mr. Langens, go ahead, please.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are. We can hear you.
Just a couple of quick comments on the financial presentation. It looks like the levy will be in the area of 7.2 to 7.4 million. That's probably about a 50% increase over the last 5 years. So I think in future discussions, you ought to take a look at the rate of revenue growth to the rate of tax increase. It's a little out of balance. The other thing on the FAA, I realize that there are certain bureaucratic hurdles there, but I think there's a substantive argument here is that it's not being removed as like a warehouse that supported the airport. It's a habitational property. And so somehow they allow habitational property and not residential property. But I think there can be arguments made that this type of facility for low-income seniors is pretty much a habitational property. And I think some argument could be waged along those lines. I think it's certainly at least worth a chance, because certainly the social need is very great out there. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Langens. Who's next for public comment? I want to thank you all for sticking with us for such a long meeting. If anyone else would like to speak, raise your hand, or not seeing any hands, you can just speak if you like. And if you're trying and not getting through, just wave your hands in the air. We'll see if we can see you. You won't be able to. All right, I'm not seeing anyone else who wants to speak. So I will ask commissioners for your response to public comment. And if anyone's having difficulty making public comment, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll get you on. Commissioners, response to public comment?
No response.
Oh, I just want to thank the commenters for, I've taken notes on what they've said, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Wolfsberg. Yes, collaborating with Thurston County is prudent. We can share the expense and we rely on their expertise. Mr. Langens, thanks for your analysis. If our levy has increased 50% over the last 5 years, has our income, good question. Are we out of balance? And for the FAA, thank you for your suggestions about a habitational property. I'm sure that Mr. Chance could also help us overcome some of those FAA obstacles. So we rely on public comment to help us make better decisions. So thank you all for your attention and your input. Right, moving on. Our next item is commission reports. Who'd like to go first?
I would.
Go right ahead, Commissioner Downing.
Thank you, Commissioner Zeta. While we're thanking, and I want to thank you again, Commissioner Zeta, for stepping up and running the meeting tonight. I appreciate it. My only report is Commissioner McGregor and I happened to be at the Thurston County Chamber Luncheon last week, and we got to hear the 4 port candidates debate. And I think it's fair to thank those 4 people, Bob Ayel, Amy Evans, Jesse Simmons, and Joel Hansen. stepping up and putting the time in to run a campaign. It's important for people to care about their community and care about public office, and running for elected office. It's a whole lot of work, but it's extremely appreciated. And I think we've got 4 qualified people who are interested in becoming port commissioners.
I want to caution you, Commissioner Downing, you don't want to get close to.
Thank you, Commissioner Zeta. Thank you. I didn't single anybody out, so I think it's fair game. And besides, the Thurston County Chamber is one of our assignments, so thank you.
Now, the only thing I want to report on is that I will not be at the 11/1 commission work session. I'll be traveling that day, and there's no way I can be home in time to participate. So I just want to pass that along. So, and that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McGregor. Thank you, Commissioner Downing. Let's see. I listened to the Thursday meeting between Tumwater and Panatone. It's a pre-building site plan or building site plan feedback meeting between the developer and the city. And it was very interesting. The city identified high groundwater as a serious issue for the developer. And I was really impressed with the city's engineer. He knows his stuff. He knows that groundwater management is difficult in that area. And this is on Center Street, not on Kimmy Street. It's on the dry side. He also identified there's a sewer pipe over there that's old and too small, and it might end up being the developer's responsibility to replace and upgrade that sewer pipe. The developer is discussing the possibility of gallery storage of stormwater, which would be underneath the buildings. Tumwater's evaluating that. The developer said several times this might be the only parcel we develop, but who knows? The developer asked whether they could get their building site plan approved without doing frontage improvements for safety. And the city said, no, you have to do the frontage improvements for safety first. Get some skin in the game. So they're back to the drawing board. A new building site plan will be submitted, and nothing's happening fast is the bottom line. But Tumwater has standards and they have knowledgeable staff, and it was a useful meeting. Okay, so that's it for commission reports. Other business. Does anyone have other business? Commissioner Downing.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Zeta. Executive Director Gibbony, I was just hoping that we're planning on having an employee appreciation event. What do you think the possibility of that is? We've had those in the past. It's been a tough year. It'd be great to show that employee appreciation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, I was just talking today with staff. We are looking at options for conducting that. As you know, it is still difficult at this point to plan social events, and that we are still in a public health declared emergency. We are looking at doing something for sure. What form it takes, we are still uncertain, but we're making plans for it this week.
Excellent, thank you.
I have one, if I might. We heard tonight that the executive director has signed the MOU for the broadband action team. So we're getting involved in broadband here with the other entities that are moving along. We've heard, and I've heard at the last couple of meetings, that the commission has expressed a desire to get on board with this. And my question is, during this whole presentation on the budget, I didn't see any line item for broadband. And I brought up the fact that, and I've asked staff to look at it, and they may be in the process, but I think before we have our public hearing on the 8th, we need to have a line item in there for some kind of broadband funding, and where is it coming from? And I suggested at the time that we have money in our restricted real estate investment fund of about $456,000. But I think if we're intent on getting in this broadband business, we need to have more than just a document that says, yes, we're going to be complacent and be involved. We need to have a dollar amount in there of some sort. So I'm just asking if staff could bring back a option on how we could have some money in there, broadband. And I would really recommend we take a look at that real estate investment fund, because that money is just sitting there. And I don't know, you can't buy much property for $456,000, but you surely could put some money into something that's for the public good. And I think this is a way to do it without raising taxes. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner McGregor. I fully agree with your suggestion and look forward to seeing that at our next meeting. And I have one other item of other business. I believe all Port Commissioners received a letter from the owner of the Shell station on, what is it, Plum and State or Plum and Fifth. There's a concern about an irregularity with the lease.
Commissioner, excuse me, point of order. I'm going to ask the commission to refrain from discussing specific lease negotiation details in an open session. If you'd like to be briefed on those in an executive session, I'd be more than happy to do so. But I'm going to just ask for your deference to this and not discuss this in an open session.
I do request that we be briefed on that without delay in executive session. So let's do that.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. So next up is meeting announcements. Executive Director.
Then, Shayla, do you have those available?
Give me just 1 second here.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Sam, I don't have that open. I'm getting it here in the documents.
Do you not have those, Shayla?
Perhaps Shayla can just, if she's got them handy, she can read them out loud.
Yeah, so.
Or Executive Director Gibney, if you have those in front of you, maybe you could just tell us about them.
I'm sorry, I don't know that I have them here. Hold on.
Yeah.
They're not in our packet either.
So there will be a work session on November 1st coming up at our normal time of 2:30 p.m. Then our commission meeting on November 8th at 5:30 p.m. And then our the following the 15th on a work session on at our normal time of 2:30 p.m.
And if I might interject, we have a public hearing on the 8th for our budget.
Thank you. Mhm.
And then we have the work session where we hopefully, if we have to refine anything based on public comment, and then final adoption would be then at the 22nd? Or 22nd meeting?
22nd. Mhm.
All right, good. Thank you.
Mhm.
I'll make sure people know about that.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner McGregor and Executive Director Gibney.
Mhm.
Anything else we need to talk about before we adjourn? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Go Seahawks, and I motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.